Meet the Press, the world's longest-running television program.
We are back on Meet the Press with Ferdinand Marcos, the President of the Philippines, for this interview. Mr. President, we had just talked to General Ramos, and he says that they are charged with people power, that they feel that they can topple your regime through the use of the Filipino people. What do you say to that?
They are now limited to a small corner of one constabulary camp, and they talk about toppling the president. Well, as you know, they don't have much military power with them. All they have is about 400 men. And the moment we hit them, they'll be wiped out. And secondly, with respect to people's power, on my inauguration or oath-taking, we will hold rallies in every capital of every province, 73. And possibly about 60 cities. And this shows to you that there is no comparison about our power base among the people and their power base. There's no comparison about their military power and our military power. And I would like to say that this Enrile, former defense minister, is organizing a new power group, trying to get me to resign so he can take over as chairman of a new junta or council. Even now, this council is working. They're not going to work for Cory Aquino. They're working for themselves.
Well, President Marcos,
yes.
President Marcos, would you resign? Would you consider resigning now that...
Of course not.
Well,
of course not. Of course not. I am president. I was proclaimed by the only constitutional body that can canvass and proclaim the winner in the presidential election. So why should I step down?
Well,
Mr. President, they talk about fraud. They talk about fraud. They have no evidence about it. I have evidence of fraud committed by the opposition. Now, with respect to these people, they have started a coup d'etat about 2 days ago, and they aborted it because they realized that we were up to it. Now they are continuing the coup d'etat.
Mr. President, there are civilians surrounding the military rebels. Would you order your troops to fire on the civilians in order to get to the building?
I beg your pardon, would I order the military?
Would you order troops to fire on the civilians who are trying to guard the military rebels?
No. We'll bide our time, but we will disperse the civilians, protect them, take care of them, and then we hit Enrile and Ramos.
Well, how will you get rid of...
They don't surrender.
Sir, how will you disperse those civilians without bloodshed, without violence?
We will quietly push them aside in order that we can enter the camp.
Mr. President...
The civilians realize what is happening.
Mr.
They
President,
may be on the other side, but they're not going to get hurt.
Mr. President, the White House put out a statement about 12 hours ago saying, in effect, that your government has lost credibility and legitimacy. In other words, as the Chinese might say, you've lost your mandate of heaven. How are you going to rule in that case without any kind of American support?
Look, that is not the message that I got from President Reagan. The message that I got from President Reagan this afternoon or this noon was that he hopes that the Filipino people will be able to decide this without any bloodshed. And we are hoping that we can do so. But I have asked that we negotiate. I've offered the most generous terms to them. But no, they imposed a condition that I step down. Why? Because they want to take over. This is a continuation of the rebellion they started 2 days ago.
President Marcos,
yes, go ahead.
the chairman of our Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Lugar, says that you have now lost a good portion of the military, you've lost the middle class, you've lost the church. Isn't it time for you to find some way to make a transition and to leave office?
Look, all this talk about the church. Several of the bishops have already clarified that that church resolution is spurious. It was approved by a small minority of the bishop. Now, with respect to the military, We are in control of probably 98 to 99% of the military. With respect to the people, the only constitutional body legitimately authorized to canvass the votes and to proclaim the winner is our parliament, just like your House of Representatives.
Mr. President,
nobody can deprive the House of Representatives of the United States of the right to proclaim the winner in a presidential election. And now everybody is trying to deprive the poor parliament of the power under the Constitution to proclaim the winner.
Mr. President,
Even the media of the United States.
Mr. President, do you plan to place General Ramos and Minister Enrile under arrest?
If they survive what may be a bloody confrontation, they will be placed under arrest.
Do you expect they will not survive the confrontation?
They will not.
Do you expect
They are not. They are afraid to have a confrontation. When they saw some of the tanks coming in, they called up General Byrne. They called me up, begging that we do not attack them with this tank.
Do you plan to...
It's very obvious.
Mr.
Yes,
President,
yes.
do you plan to arrest Cory Aquino? Some people have suggested that she is now afraid for her safety.
It may not even be necessary. The way the junta or the council is being organized, Cory Aquino is not the president under Enrile. Enrile will be the chairman of this new council, and Cory Aquino will only be a member. This is a new power bloc, a new power group, trying to use force, coercion, intimidation to try and bring down the president or make him resign. I'm not about to resign.
Mr. President, you talked a moment ago about a message that came to you today from President Reagan. Do you still regard
Yes.
President Reagan as your friend?
Well, yes, I still think that his perceptions are better than most, especially the members of the Congress, your Congress, and the media. The problem here is the perceptions of some of your people and the media is so different from reality. Now they're talking about making me resign. How can I resign after being proclaimed by the only body that can canvass and that can proclaim the winner?
Mr. President,
I will fight for my position.
Mr. President, Minister Enrile says that you ordered him to steal votes in his province in the election, 350,000 votes. Is that correct?
He is lying. He is lying. And I would like to prove this by having all the ballot boxes open. Let us see what proof he has.
Mr.
I
President...
don't know how we can open these ballot boxes, but I would like to see what evidence he has. He is talking about 300,000 votes, and I won by 1.5 million. Even if there was any stealing of votes, that would not change the result of the voting. How can they talk about fraudulence? I won in the hometown of my opponent, Cory Aquino.
Mr.
I won
President...
in her province. No, will you allow me? Will you allow me?
Excuse me, sir.
I won in her province. I won in her region. And don't tell me that I won by cheating when he is there, she is there. And all her guards are there, all her representatives are there. That's ridiculous.
Let me ask you, sir, Mr. President, if your friend Ronald Reagan were to ask you or to suggest that you resign or share power or begin an orderly transition to avoid civil war in your country, would you listen to the U.S. government and to President Reagan?
There is going to be no civil war. There is no force. Not even the Communist Party, NPA, and the National Democratic Front can mount a civil war in our country. I will wipe them out if they try to.
Mr. President, I want to go back and ask you once again about President Reagan and ask you the question again. If President Reagan and his administration were to ask you for the interests of the Philippine nation to step down and prepare an orderly transition to another government, would you listen to the president, sir?
Look, I do not answer speculative questions. I do not believe that he will do so. I do not believe that he will derogate or degrade our Constitution by pushing aside the proclamation, the canvass, by our own Parliament. And I do not believe in answering speculative questions. If that ever happens, let me think about it. Let's talk about it.
Mr. President, you obviously had a great deal of faith in Lieutenant General Ramos. You named him as the acting chief of staff. You did that twice. You've always been very complimentary toward him. Did this come as a great shock to you?
What was the question?
You obviously had confidence in General Ramos. You appointed him to high office. Did this military revolt come as a great shock to you when General Ramos was participating in it?
Oh, yes, but I realized then that they were part of the rebellion, the coup d'etat that was started about 2 or 3 days ago. And I realized that this was a conspiracy between Enrile and Ramos. And they must pay for it.
Mr. President, thank you very much for your time once again, sir. All of this, of course, has a major impact upon the United States, and whatever ultimately the Reagan administration decides to do, it is already clear that Congress is going to play a major role in forming American policy. In a moment, an interview with two influential Senate chairmen, Richard Lugar of the Foreign Relations Committee and David Durenberger of the Select Intelligence Committee, when Meet the Press returns right after these messages.